Welcome to Justice Now, and I'm going to start a new series, and in particular it will be for African Canadian Black workers from new to veteran, of things to keep a lookout for. I think that it will be very important to know this information and share this information, and some of the ways of how to handle some of the situations that you'll be encountering when you go through the process of looking for a job. Once you've secured a job, how to maintain keeping that job, and what to do with some of the things that, or some of the patterns that would come up. So how do you deal with certain types of questions? How do you deal with not being really properly trained? How do you deal with omission of information? Things of that nature. So it helps to navigate through the job career experience. I also invite listeners to add their information as well, to see what lessons they've learned, so that it would be most helpful. Anyone who trolls or is racist will be banned and blocked from the comment section. Yeah, let's begin. So I haven't decided on a title yet, so I'm sure that by the end of this particular video, I will have a title down below. So this is on the very first part of the job experience, which is to put together your resume and submit it out for review, and to be called into an interview. So when I was leaving the workplace mobbing situation and working on my exit plan, so I hadn't physically left at that time, but mentally I had left. I had already said enough is enough, working on my exit plan, and sent in my resume. So first thing to do is to always make sure that your resume is up to date, regardless of whether or not you intend on looking for a job. It's always important, so that in the event that you do need to start looking and you recognize that you do need to start working on your exit plan, that you have the most up-to-date information, rather than having to, try and recollect, what did I do here? What did I do here? So another thing that you can do is make sure that you keep copies of your job description, for your former jobs, and summarize it, even if it means, once a month, once every 2 weeks, but keep it fairly consistent to make sure that you've included any training that you've done. You've included, or in reviewing, if you find that you can word it a little bit better for the description, so that it's more clear. I would definitely advise you to do that, because again, when the time comes, you're going to be very confused. You're going to be, okay, what can I put here? What can I put there? You're going to have unnecessary stress put on you. So to help reduce that stress, prepare, right? Also, you don't want to miss any important information. If there are particular trainings that you've done, you don't want to miss it. Like, for instance, there was a time that I wasn't always updating my resume, and I noticed in one of the situations is that I forgot to put down one of the items that I was trained for that was actually valid. And luckily, I caught this in time so that I could submit it to the employer to say, yes, this particular certificate is still valid. So then I'll be able to be there for the training. And this really helps. Sometimes it helps in that the training time for that particular certificate, if you need recertification, will be reduced as a result. Sometimes, depending if when the certificate expires, sometimes you would not need to go through another training, and that gets you through to getting regular shifts a lot quicker. So there are definite benefits to ensuring that you are prepared and that you keep your resumes up to date. So yes, for the interviews. So just prior to confirming to an interview, some of the things that I like to ask are, what is the salary requirements, and or what is the hourly wage? You definitely want to find out, and you also want to have in your mind, your cost of living. And if your cost of living is going to be impacted by the amount. So in some cases, like in my case, even though the job title was higher, the pay is lower by several thousands of dollars. But I'm going to take the slightly higher title so that I can use it to negotiate for higher pay and a higher title for later on. So you have a plan as to where you wish to go. I've had opportunities to take a lower title with higher pay. However, how it reflects on the resume will not be as good, because then I'll be stuck in that particular lower position. So you definitely want to look at not just the pay, but also the title and what that title can bring you. So yes. So you definitely want to find out what your cost of living is and what you're able to work with. And that's going to help weed out a lot of the, weed out some of the calls. A lot is relative, that term. So it's going to weed out some of the calls. So if you find that there's just positions that are just too low for your pay grade, you weed them out, thank them for their time, but you're moving on to the next one. Let's see. When you get into the interview, pay attention to who is interviewing you and how many people. I've had situations where I've had 6 people interview me, and I would be in what's known as the hot seat, and you have questions coming from different staff asking you they call it the hiring committee. So you have it from the hiring committee asking you different questions about the position. So make sure that you are well versed in the position, review the job description, and if you have any transferable skills, tie it into that job description and use them as examples. They tend to use scenarios. So if you have, say, a job or a work journal that outlines, how not only what's happened to you, but how you've handled situations, you can always refer to that. Or you can, like on a weekly or even daily basis, you can write down how you've handled certain situations, if it was a successful outcome, if it was not, so that you can have it in your mind ready to use, in a performance, or even in an interview. And performance meaning a job performance, should you get the position. So that, because they're going to be asking you examples of how you've developed and grow professionally. But I'm going ahead of the game. This is at the interview stage. So pay attention to who's interviewing you. Oftentimes, the people that interview you do not look like you. And it's very rare that I've come across, any black workers who are um, hiring managers, or there'll be some may be in human resources, but it's very rare that I've come across. So, for instance, and that's also another thing that you can help you tell as to what type of company it is. In one interview, I was asked, tell us about diversity. Um, and it was three white women that were asking me questions about diversity, um, which was interesting. It was bizarre to me because it's like, well, I'd love to tell you about diversity. The thing is, I don't see the diversity reflected. Now, keep in mind, affirmative action does include women, which is coded as white women. Um, so I guess there's an overrepresentation of diversity of white women in that case. But in terms of, I didn't see a non-white male. I didn't see a non-white woman also reflected on that hiring committee. So pay attention to that. So if they're saying that, they're diverse, but it's an all-white front, meaning both white men and white women, then you can tell that company or organization is not as diverse as they claim to be. Um, Keep in mind, just as you are being interviewed, you are also interviewing them, right? Because you want to make sure that you want to be in the type of space where you're able to flourish. And even though you do not know the company as well, research about the company and make sure you have a set of questions that you wish to ask the hiring committee, because they always ask you, do you have any questions after the interview? That's when you start presenting your questions. Yes, I do have questions, and list your questions as to what you're looking for. In addition to that, you definitely also want to observe as to how those questions are being answered. If your questions are being answered as if you are annoying them or frustrating them, or they're acting as if they don't wish to answer your questions, then it gives you an early enough warning sign to see if that's a place that you really want to be in. The most recent interview I had gone on prior to obtaining this job was where it was a hiring committee. Um, this one was all non-white women, but it was really interesting because the person who had the title of executive director, I noticed that just when asking my question, she was like, just knowing her, like looking at her facial reaction. And these aren't like hard questions. These are like, what is your salary here? And, do you have benefits? And, is there an employee assistance program? Basic standard stuff. Um, she was like giving scowls, like her brow was knitted. She didn't seem very welcoming. I saw how she treated one of the hiring committee staff opposed to how the others being treated. Um, so yeah, like you pick up on those cues, and then when I was asked, oh, can you leave your references, I decided, you know what, no, that's a place that I do not wish to be in, because I've been given a lot of warning signs from there. Um, so yes, that is for that one, and stay tuned. I'm going to be giving you some more videos on what other things to look at prior to accepting the position if you are offered.